Now that the order is set and we are officially into draft season, let's kick things off with a first round mock. We're going first 32 picks, no trades. For all of these picks, you're going to be seeing my scouting report, and then depending on what conference they play in, I'm going to show tape. I got put into timeout for 3 months for showing Big Ten tape. I think I'm good to show college football playoff stuff, but if you want to see film for all the Big Ten prospects, I put the full version of this video up on Wide Left. The link to that is in the description. Starting off with the Raiders at 1, no surprises here. We're going Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza. Mendoza has good size, probably going to come in right under 6'5". I would say B+ arm talent. If you watch that whole shot against Iowa, that kind of exemplifies what he can do with his arm. His accuracy is outstanding, especially to the intermediate sideline. I mean, I don't know if I saw him miss a single back shoulder fade, 10-yard out, comeback, anything like that. Now, I do have a few concerns with Mendoza. Number one is processing and the lack of translatable throws in Indiana's offense. Wasn't asked to target the middle of the field very often. Highest rate of RPOs in college football. When he did run more NFL-style concepts, I thought he really struggled to get to his second read, specifically from within the pocket. When the pocket heats up, he has a tendency to abandon his reads, and he was also a little bit spotty recognizing post-snap safety rotations. I still think he's the no-brainer number 1 pick in this class, but definitely a step below guys like Caleb Williams, Drake May coming out of college. Picks 2 and 3 are difficult this year. For the Jets, there obviously isn't a second quarterback that I like in this spot. They might not have as immediate pressing of a need at off-ball linebacker, but I think Sonny Styles is clear and away the best player in this class, ignoring positional value. And so that's who I'm going to go with at pick number 2. Sonny Styles is just as close to a perfect linebacker prospect as I've ever evaluated. Prototypical frame, converted safety, so great athlete, but doesn't have any of the issues processing, reading his keys that you expect from a converted safety. He is far past the positional transformation process of his career. Now he's just a really good football player. Now with these scouting reports, I will ask you to make note of when it was last updated. I tried my best to get relatively up-to-date scouting reports for all the players I picked in this video. Didn't have time to get to everyone, but as you can see with Sonny Styles, it says 0 missed tackles in 2025. Unfortunately, he did miss a couple in the championship game, but just an outstanding tackler. Processes his run fit like automatically. Excellent block shedder. He can play press man. Needs to improve his zone instincts a little bit, but overall just such a clean prospect. And then the Cardinals at 3. I didn't do trade downs for this mock. This is the pick where I was debating making an exception. Ideally, they would take a tackle here. I know Spencer Fono is a popular pick. I just don't think there's a tackle in this class that's worth the 3rd overall pick, especially over one of these receivers or edge rushers. And so I'm going with another Ohio State receiver, Tate, who is my wide receiver 1. Tate is 6'3" with a massive catch radius, insanely explosive deep threat. He actually doesn't have elite top end speed, but he's so explosive off the line that he stacks man coverage consistently. Very nuanced deep route runner, does a great job of setting defenders up along the stem and then blowing right past them. He has the best ball skills in this class, 12 for 14 on contested targets last year and had 0 drops on 66 targets overall. Does an exceptional job tracking the ball over his shoulder, playing above the rim and high pointing it, or adjusting along the sideline and getting both feet in bounds. His route tree was fairly specialized. It was a lot of goes, posts, and stops, but he has a really impressive ability to sink his hips for a taller receiver, so he can explode off the line, drive defenders off of the break point, get them to bail aggressively upfield, and then snap off his break on a dime, create a lot of separation on stops and comebacks. He also flashed some nuanced technique to run outs and digs. He played Z at Ohio State. I think to play X in the NFL, he'll definitely need to get stronger and play through physicality at the line of scrimmage a lot more consistently. He's got a really quick, explosive release where he can, stack man coverage before they even realize it. But if the defender gets hands on him at the line, it does kind of labor his release and he wears that contact for the entire route pretty much. And the biggest weakness for Tate is that he just doesn't really do anything after the catch. He has decent initial explosiveness where he can split a vice tackle, get some easy yards after the catch, but really poor balance in open space, not overly physical through contact, and not very elusive either. With the 4th pick, the Titans are going to take Texas Tech edge rusher David Bailey. If I was doing this based on what I would do, I would probably go with Bain Jr. here, but it seems like the Titans prefer Bailey in this spot, and I don't hate the pick at all. So Bailey entered the year based on his Stanford tape as an explosive speed rusher who is essentially just a DPR, designated pass rusher. What I wanted to see from him at Texas Tech was improved run support and a more consistent bull rush or long arm. He showed flashes of the long arm at Stanford, but only used it like a handful of times. And in 2025, I think he partially checked both of those boxes. So at Stanford, he was on the field for 28.7% of their snaps against 12 plus personnel. So 12, 13, 22, any kind of heavy personnel where you know the offense is going to run the ball. That number shot up to 69.4% at Texas Tech. So step one, he was at least on the field for early downs. I don't think he was a particularly high impact run defender until the last 5 weeks. The last 5 weeks of the season, he had 13 total run stops. You especially watch those last 2 or 3 games, that's where he really peaked as a run defender. So I'm willing to buy into the development there to an extent. I sort of project him as a 2.5 down player, where he could play all 3 downs if you needed him to, but if you've got a base defensive end that's just better at defending the run, you would prefer to have him on the field for early downs. And then as a power rusher, it's a pretty similar story. I mean, he's got really long arms despite having kind of a spindly, undersized frame. He can establish first contact, obviously has an explosive first step. Main thing he needs to improve is just the foot chop, in the drive phase to continue to displace after he's already latched on initially. At 5, I've got the Giants going Arizona State receiver Jordan Tyson. Really like the way that his skill set meshes with Malik Neighbors. Now, when I do an updated mock later in the year, this could be a guy that falls a little bit because of medicals. He has consistently had issues staying healthy, so that whole aspect of his evaluation is definitely concerning to me. But I think he's the most nuanced route runner with the most attention to detail of any receiver at the top of this class. He's explosive out of breaks with long strides, good short area burst. He doesn't have elite long speed, and like most receivers that are going to go in the first round, he needs to get better playing through contact. The Browns have 2 picks in the first round this year, and with their first pick, I'm going to take Georgia left tackle Monroe Freeling. He's a freak athlete with what looks like over 34-inch arms. His tape really started to improve over the second half of the year. He pretty much went from a back-to-school grade to an easy first-round grade in about 6 games. Easily gets depth in his pass sets, has no issues opening his hips and recovering. He can slide back inside with moves through the B gap. You watch him get out of his stance as a puller, that's enough, just one play to sell you as an athlete. But really where you saw the improvement was with his hand placement. The timing and accuracy just made him so much more consistent in pass pro. I would point to that Ole Miss game, the second one, as kind of his magnum opus as a pass blocker. Biggest thing with Freeling is he just needs to fill out his frame. You see it just looking at him visually, but also cedes a little bit of ground to the bull rush over time. Washington Commanders at 7 are going to take Bain Jr., my number 1 graded edge rusher in this class. He is the definition of a sawed-off pass rusher, obviously has incredibly short arms, reported to be sub 31 inches, which is almost unheard of for a productive edge rusher in the NFL. Pass rusher ranks pretty low on the list in terms of how I prioritize and value arm length with draft prospects, but absolutely, I mean, if he had a more prototypical frame, he would probably be my number 1 overall player. He's got an explosive first step. His get off, especially in the playoffs, was unreal. I think his bend is decent for his size, but I mean, there's a lot of reps where you see him just unable to capture an angle at the top of the arc. Really good power rusher, deadly hump move where you kind of counter back, hook under the inside shoulder with his inside arm. He's got a double swipe, cross chop. You watch him and Akeem Messidor, clearly the 2 best coached edge rushers in college football last year. And then he's a force defending the run as well, which is kind of the thing that sets him above David Bailey for me personally. I've got the Saints taking Arvell Reese at 8. And this is a player that I don't exactly know what to do with. I could easily see him coming off the board as early as 2. I think he's an incredibly talented player. I just view him slightly differently than it seems like the NFL is going to view him. I think he's an excellent linebacker prospect. I have him graded as my 2nd ranked linebacker, 3rd ranked player overall. There were flashes on his tape where I thought he could be a high-end first-round prospect as a pass rusher, but he was barely used in that role. I mean, the sample size is so small that I have a hard time giving him a first round grade solely based off of that. And then when you nitpick his actual edge snaps, I do think that there are some limitations that show up. So he's a naturally explosive athlete. I think kind of a disappointing but decent first step, average bend. I saw him win 3 times with a long arm, once with a bull rush, twice with a cross chop, and then later in the year he started to add to his counter move set. There was one time against Markel Bell when he went long arm and then transitioned to a speed rip. You saw another example of that against Carter Smith in the Big Ten championship game. Aside from that, there just aren't a lot of examples of him winning or even trying to win as a pass rusher. I mean, most of his usage and production was as a QB spy or on stunts, pursuit stuff that is not really as translatable to the NFL. I really see him as a linebacker that can rush as opposed to an edge rusher that has some linebacker versatility. But as an off-ball linebacker, I mean, the first thing that I have to mention with Arvell Reese, he is the best block shedder that I've ever evaluated. He just pulverizes opponents on first contact, sets an immovable edge. I saw him get put on the ground like once or twice, and it was really late in the play where he was trying to let up and like make the tackle. His instincts in the run game I thought were impressive for a first-year starter. Just needs to improve his coverage awareness in spot drop zone. The main potential athletic limitation I see with Arvell Reese off the ball would be getting depth in his back pedal and zone coverage. And then Chiefs at 9, I'm going Jeremiah Love, running back out of Notre Dame. I'm sure the Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick has made some Chiefs fans a little bit hesitant to go running back in the first round. And if there was an edge rusher at this spot that I thought was a better value than Love, I would take him. The difference between Love and Helaire is that Jeremiah Love has awesome first round traits for a running back. And I mean, I think his tape is just undeniably so much better. Love is such a well-rounded prospect, outstanding vision, breakaway speed. I thought he was a lot more elusive in the open field this year. He is outstanding through contact. He's productive as a receiver. Does a great job of setting up his blocks, and he only has 1 fumble across his entire college career. And then rounding out the top 10, we've got Ohio State safety Caleb Downs going to the Cincinnati Bengals. Downs is probably the most instinctive college safety that I've evaluated in terms of robbing digs and in-breakers over the middle of the field. Like if you just stick him at post safety, have him survey the passing concept, break downhill, he's going to create a lot of turnovers and force a lot of incompletions. He's an elite run defender, does a great job shedding and avoiding blocks, has had a consistently low missed tackle rate for his entire career. I don't think he's a standout athlete. The size is adequate, but nothing special for a safety. And his role within Ohio State's defense, I think, complicates things a little bit if you're trying to project his upside. Now, I have no concerns about well, I shouldn't say no concerns. I have relatively very few concerns about Caleb Downs being a bust compared to most players. I've said this before, but like if you asked me to pick a player that I thought was going to have a 10-year career out of this class, Caleb Downs would be my first pick. But when you're thinking about a safety's upside, I think it comes down to athleticism and versatility. And there isn't a lot of proven versatility on Caleb Downs' tape. And I say the word proven because I do think there's more within him to untap. He just hasn't really been asked to range from single high all the way to the sideline or play tight ends and press man. I think it's definitely fair to have questions about whether or not he can do those things, but for a team like the Bengals that just needs some stability on the back end of their defense, this is a no-brainer pick. For the Dolphins at 11, I went with Tennessee corner Jermod McCoy. Based on the 2024 tape, I think he's a top 3 to 4 player in this class. He's got size, speed, easy vertical transitions out of press. That's a really important thing with press corners. You know, you can run fast in the 40-yard dash where you're facing forward the whole time, but the actual transition of opening your hips and then gearing up to max speed down the sideline, that's something that a lot of straight line fast corners can struggle with. McCoy, excellent transitions. He can decelerate with stops and comebacks. Very smart in zone coverage, great tackler, willing participant in run support. The main thing I wanted to see him improve is just get more consistent turning around and locating the ball. He's shown that he can do that in flashes, but the Arkansas tape from last year against Andrew Armstrong and then the Ohio State tape against Jeremiah Smith showed some weaknesses in that area. But McCoy becomes a really complicated player to grade because, 95% of these players, I just watch the tape, input the grade, call it a day. He's one one of these guys that's got a medical or some kind of other X factor that could impact where he goes in the draft. When we get something more concrete, I might end up dropping him a little bit. The thing that makes McCoy especially tough is that, you know, he had the ACL tear last offseason, so it's understandable that he didn't come back and play this year, especially when Tennessee, you know, wasn't making a postseason run. You would have liked to see him at least participate in the Senior Bowl, or, you know, there needs to be some like recorded footage of you playing football in the last year for me to feel comfortable drafting you in the top 10, but purely on the field, Jermon McCoy is my cornerback 1. And then Dallas is going to continue the run on corners by taking Mansour Delane out of LSU with the 12th pick. 40 career starts. Last year, he had 0 penalties, didn't allow a touchdown, only allowed 2 receptions of 20 or more yards, and then he also had 2 interceptions, 7 pass breakups. On tape, he's a very smooth mover, light feet, loose hips, sticky in man coverage, technically polished with really good eye balance and discipline. He can read the quarterback and the receiver simultaneously, but he is undersized. The arms are barely above 30 inches. I talked about not really valuing arm length for edge rushers that much, specifically pass rushers. I do care about it a lot for corners, tight ends, and linebackers. And then on top of that, I don't expect Delane to run very well. There's a few reps against Casey Concepcion where he just gets cooked off the line of scrimmage, and it's pretty concerning, but still easy top 15 prospect in this class. So the Rams are pissed because I took the top 2 corners off the board. Could potentially continue the run at corner here, but I think I'm going to go to the offensive line and take right tackle Francis Moanoa out of Miami. He's going to be the Rob Havenstein replacement at right tackle. The length is below average. I think I saw 33.5 inches, but he has the timing and the technical variance in terms of his hand usage that I think is necessary to survive at tackle with shorter than average arms. You saw that with Will Campbell in the Super Bowl. The issue isn't that he had short arms. The issue is that his punch timing was completely off. You don't have that issue with Moanoa. Really improved his anchor this year. Also got a lot better against inside counters. Still need to write up his report, so I don't have a new one on the screen, but I've watched all his games, and I think he's first or second offensive lineman off the board pretty easily. So the first priority for Baltimore this offseason is going to be replacing he who must not be named at right guard. And we are going to do that with Vega Iwane out of Penn State, 6'3", 334 pounds, absolute brick wall against bull rushes, elite stopping power, does not cede an inch when he drops his anchor. Very skilled hands, uses them independently, does a good job refitting throughout the rep. And then he's a people mover in the run game. Not the best zone blocking range, but he can create vertical displacement unlike about anyone in this class. The Bucs are going to take Oregon tight end Kenyon Sadiq at 15. Densely built tight end with elite speed and burst. He's the definition of a seam stretcher. Second highest average yards of separation on vertical routes last year in this tight end class. He doesn't need double moves, but sometimes he'll throw in a stop and go, and it's just unfair when you've got a linebacker squatting or driving downhill and he just stacks them easily. I wanted to see more technical refinement from Sadiq as a route runner this year, and through the first like 11 weeks, there was pretty much no progression in that area. He was a classic step counter who would just get blanketed on any kind of horizontal breaks against man coverage. He missed a game with an injury. I think it was the Iowa game. Then comes back week 12. All of a sudden, he's added this rocker step, and like he isn't the most technically polished route runner for a tight end by any means, but the bar for like what you have to do as an athlete of Kenyon Sadiq's caliber to separate against linebackers is not really that high. You just need a rocker step, you know, a nice pressure step, some good head fakes, and like adequate short area quickness, which he does have. Now, I think he struggles at times to sink his hips, and so that might keep like stops and, you know, deep hooks off of his route tree. But seeing more salesmanship as a route runner, that was kind of the last piece. That was the fifth leg of Exodia. I feel confident he can be a 3-level separator. Did have 6 drops in 2025, only 1 the previous year, but he caught 7 out of 12 contested targets, which kind of balances it out. And then on top of that, he's a tenacious run blocker. The lack of prototypical size and length might keep him from being a full-time inline blocker, I think, but he can hold up against defensive ends and just an ass kicker against DBs and linebackers. All right, the Mekhi Lemon fall ends here. I hope he has memorized every player that I took before him in this mock. I've got Lemon as a top 10 player, but just with the way the board played out, couldn't find a spot for him, but he is going 16 to the Jets. So undersized receiver, he's an elite route salesman, a deep understanding of how to attack leverage and how to turn a defender's hips away from his break. Really quick feet, good short area agility, gets in and out of breaks efficiently. I think the most difficult part of the Mekhi Lemon evaluation is deciding how good of an athlete I think he actually is. Obviously, the combine will help to verify this, but when you watch him in 2025, especially the back 75% of his tape, he looks like a firmly below average athlete. Change of direction skills are obviously very good, but just in terms of linear athleticism, struggled to stack man coverage vertically, just did not look like that explosive of a receiver. I was finishing up his report, decided to go back through to 2024 tape just to double check some things. And like first play you watch him, it's like, man, I understand why I had a top 10 grade on him heading into the year, because this dude looks like a way more explosive athlete than I've been writing about for the past couple hours. So I'm interested to see if Lemon comes out and runs like a 4.42, has a really good vertical jump, and just surprises everybody with his athletic testing, because I think there could be some more juice in there than people are giving him credit for. The thing that really took Lemon's game to another level this year, though, was what he did at the catch point. 10 for 15 on contested targets. That's a really good rate for a receiver of his size, but the level of difficulty of some of these grabs is just unprecedented. 2.8% career drop rate, so it isn't just highlight plays. He's got strong hands consistently. So yeah, the Jets come away with so far the biggest steal of the draft, Mekhi Lemon at 16. At 17, the Lions are going to take Caden Proctor, Alabama left tackle, to be their Taylor Decker replacement. So Proctor is massive, and to an extent that's a strength. Like obviously his size and frame is what you're drafting him for partially, but his ability to control and manage his weight is actually my biggest concern with Caden Proctor. He has a powerful punch, which got a lot more accurate over the second half of the year. That's the reason he's going so early in this mock. And I mean, I could see him, being the Monroe Freeling pick in reality. But I think people mischaracterize Proctor as an athlete. He does have some athletic limitations, but just saying like he's a slow lumbering athlete, which seems to be the consensus, I think that is far from accurate. He's explosive out of his set, doesn't really have issues reaching his landmarks in pass pro. Where he struggles is redirecting his weight once he's at the top of his set to mirror a counter through the B gap. That's where it's pretty much just stealing candy from a baby, is hitting them with inside counters. The Vikings need a lot of help in their defensive backfield, and probably my favorite player to team scheme fit is Terrell to the Minnesota Vikings, so that's who they're going to take at 18. He is one of the few Clemson players who didn't regress in 2025. He's a fluid athlete with excellent long speed. Most importantly for Flores' scheme specifically is I think he has the best, most explosive back pedal of any corner at the top of this class. Wide receivers try to attack his cushion. I describe it as like a repellent magnet, the way that he just maintains that 2 to 3 yard buffer no matter how fast they're driving downfield. And I think the range moving backwards with his eyes on the quarterback is perfect for a defensive coordinator that likes to use so many exotic rotations, because Terrell's a guy that you can line up and press and then have him just zoom across the field, cover the deep half, and he isn't having to strain to reach that landmark. He's able to stay in a back pedal, stay reading the quarterback. On top of that, 9 forced fumbles since 2024. A really good run defender for his size. I think he's got nickel boundary versatility. They're going to have a lot of options for versatile DBs they can take, but Terrell's the guy I feel the best hanging on the outside in the NFL. The Carolina Panthers are picking at 19. I considered going with another first round receiver. I considered pairing Derek Brown with one of these defensive tackles like Caleb Banks, Caden McDonald, but ultimately I decided on Auburn edge rusher Keldrick Faulk, base defensive end with a prototypical frame, leads SEC defensive lineman with 72 run tackles over the last 2 years. He's sturdy at the point of attack. He's got a relentless motor. I would stop short of saying that he has inside-outside versatility. I think his tape against double teams is pretty disappointing, but as a run-stopping defensive end, I think he's about as good as it gets. The reason I'm a little bit lower on Keldrick Faulk is not because of the lack of pass rushing production. He was not asked to fire off the snap and just win one-on-ones. That was not his role in Auburn's defense, but I don't see him as this freak athlete with like multiple traits where, the upside is just so insane that we've got to take a chance on him. I think his first step is adequate. His hips are more flexible than I would expect for the average player of his stature, but I don't think his bend or arc speed or anything special. And then his lateral quickness to cross the blocker's face on inside moves, I think, is below average. He did expand his moveset in 2025. You'll see him throw in the ghost, double swipe, stab chop. The precision and salesmanship needs a lot of work, but at least some growth that you can kind of project a little bit there. The second tier of linebackers in this class is nowhere near the top tier, but Dallas still needs to come away with one of them at this pick, and they are going to go with Georgia linebacker CJ Allen at pick 20. Now, the first line in my scouting report for CJ Allen says, sturdy build with exceptional burst and play speed. Depending on the game or games from this year that you choose to watch, you might think that is a terrible description of CJ Allen. And so the first point I want to make is that I think he was playing through an injury at certain times this year. You'll see him lose the corner and like put up no resistance, but wanted to touch on that because I've seen a lot of people with conflicting opinions on his overall athleticism. Very consistent tackler, thud behind his pads to limit yards after contact. Also got a lot better this year at taking on blocks, natural shock behind his punch, and his anchor and ability to play through contact really took a step forward. Biggest improvement I want to see is just coverage across the board. He had some splash plays. The Florida game especially was outstanding. Overall, I thought his coverage tape was pretty abysmal. He just drops to a spot, covers grass, doesn't have much feel for the quarterback's eyes or routes that are developing behind him. He really just gives the quarterback static windows to throw into over the middle of the field. Needs to get a lot more disciplined in his response to play action, play with better spacing against RPOs. I think that phase of his game is definitely a work in progress, but I would say the same thing about the other two linebackers that would be in consideration here, Josiah Troder out of Missouri and Jake Golday out of Cincinnati. I think it's way too early for him, but both of those guys struggle in coverage as well. At 21, I've got the Steelers taking Alabama quarterback Ty Simpson, which I'm sure a lot of Steelers fans are going to hate that pick. I'm kind of with you. Simpson's another tough player to kind of get a final grade on because there's so much conflicting information across the entirety of his tape. Over the first half of the season, when he was healthy, I thought there were moments where he looked like the first overall pick. His anticipation and pre-snap processing are outstanding. Then he was injured over the second half of the year. Kind of difficult to know exactly how much to weight those games, but there was some stuff that showed up that you can't really pin on the injury. The post-snap processing really dipped. The Oklahoma game kind of exposed that. His deep accuracy was abysmal for the entire year, and I think that comes down to the fact that he's a strain thrower. He doesn't have this natural, loose, just let it rip release. He's really got to put his whole body into a throw to drive it down the field, and that's going to result in some scattershot ball placement. I ultimately decided with everything he needs to clean up and the lack of traits, I feel a lot more comfortable with a second round grade, but it seems like he's going to go in the first round, so we're taking him here to the Steelers at 21. I'd be interested to see how many mock drafts I've done this year where I didn't take Emmanuel Pregnon to the Chargers. I'm not changing now. He is my number 2 guard, and I think that's the clear need for LA. He's an older player, don't have verified birthday, but he's class of 2020, 6'4", 320 with almost 34-inch arms, 87th percentile wingspan. He's a good, not great athlete. I think he can fit any blocking scheme. His tape before this year never really impressed me, but took a massive step forward at Oregon. He's got a strong anchor, quick processor to pick up stunts and twists. Also does a great job of playing with independent hands, uses a stiff inside hand punch, and then kind of a light outside hand to contain the rush. I've got Utah tackle Spencer Fono falling to the Eagles at 23. Played right tackle at Utah. From a team building perspective, this is going to be the long-term Lane Johnson replacement, and short-term he's going to play somewhere on the interior. So Fono is a great athlete, elite pocket range, elite reactive athleticism to mirror inside moves. He just does not lose the edge in pass pro. There are so few reps where you would say he lost because of an athletic limitation. He's really good at using the flash bait technique, which I'll show on the screen. You flash the outside hand, get the rusher to deploy their move prematurely, then you retract it, cause the move to essentially land on air, immediately replace your punch while the rusher's frame is exposed. So that's essentially the strategy that he is going with, like 85% of true dropbacks. My number one concern with Fono, and the reason I've got him coming off the board a lot later than you'll see in most mock drafts, is that I'm just not convinced he can anchor against NFL power. He played last year in the low 290s. This year he's listed at 308. He's got a thin lower half, narrow frame, short arms. I don't see a lot of room to add good weight to his frame. He gets jolted by initial contact whenever he does face speed to power. There was one rep where you saw him be able to drop his hips and actually set an anchor. Other times where his lower half looks a little bit stiff. And the number one thing that clouds this aspect of his evaluation is just how rarely he even faces bull rushes in the Big 12, much less an NFL caliber one. So I love so much about Spencer Fono's game. Haven't even talked about his run blocking, which is outstanding, even better in 2024 when they ran more of an outside zone scheme. But it really all comes down to whether or not he can survive against an NFL bull rush. The Browns took Monroe Freeling with their first round pick. Now we're going to take Washington wide receiver Denzel Boston here at 24. He's a big physical boundary receiver with a prototypical frame, listed at 6'4", 209. Excellent ball skills, 10 for 13 on contested targets this year. Much better athlete than I expected based on his size, especially the initial burst, both to stack press man vertically and the burst out of breaks to create that initial separation window. His top speed is average, so those initial separation windows do close relatively quickly. Corners can recover eventually down the sideline. If he gets initial separation on like a deep over or a drag, by the time he crosses the field, usually that corner is going to be even leverage with him. But combined with his fluidity and his ability to sink his hips and decelerate at 6'4", Boston is for the most part a very well-rounded athlete. I thought a lot of his production in 2025 was schemed up. There were certain games where he was used more like a tight end than an X receiver. His efficiency was also very closely linked to the level of competition that he was facing. He averaged 1.24 yards per route run against Ohio State, Oregon, and Michigan, and 2.89 yards per route run against other teams. I want to see him diversify his release package and learn how to subtly create space at the line of scrimmage instead of just trying to power through every rep with, a linear brute force release. But a unique skill set that I could see fitting into either of the three receiver positions. Going to a receiver room without a lot of established veterans, I would expect him to play all over the formation as a rookie. The Bears are going to take Florida defensive tackle Caleb Banks at 25. My comp for him is Akeem Hicks, so Bears fans are very familiar with him. Missed most of 2025 with a foot injury, so another player like Jermod McCoy, where it's a little bit difficult right now to project exactly where he's going to end up. Banks is an imposing athlete, 6'6", 335 pounds, 35-inch arms with a 98th percentile wingspan, over 85 inches. He has heavy hands, elite block destruction, quick first step to win favorable angles as a pass rusher. He has the get off and drive power to win with his bull rush, and then so powerful and instinctive shifting to counters, breaking contact, clearing the edge, and getting upfield. You definitely wish you had another year of tape to evaluate. He looked fully healthy when he came back for the Tennessee game this year, but I wanted him to have that full sample of tape to get more consistent holding up against double teams, show more nuance and better timing with his initial move as a pass rusher. Overall, though, such a rare talent, and he will be my first defensive tackle off the board. The Bills are going to add some speed to their offense with Texas A&M receiver Casey Concepcion. He is 5'11", 188, but actually faced the second highest rate of press coverage in this class. You might think he's a slot or a guy that can't hold up on the outside just by looking at him, but when you turn on his tape, it's immediately evident that that's what he does best. He dodges contact at the line of scrimmage, burns press man, stacks him down the sideline early in the route. He can break at sharp angles, does a great job of selling and setting up his breaks, knows how to attack blind spots, and then really crafty hand usage at the break point to maximize separation. He does have drop issues. 7 drops in each of the last 2 seasons. That's by far my biggest concern, is just dependability at the catch point. But he's slippery with the ball in his hands, 2 punt return touchdowns last year. Also didn't mention, but he's an incredibly precise and crafty route runner against zone coverage as well. At 27, I've got the 49ers taking Indiana receiver Omar Cooper Jr., 5'11", 204. Just a balanced, well-rounded prospect with very few glaring weaknesses. He played slot this year, but in 2024, he played over 90% of his snaps at Z. I think he most likely plays inside in the NFL, but his 2024 tape showed that he can at least survive against press. He has the short area athleticism and the salesmanship and attention to detail to beat man coverage on a variety of routes. Sails, outs, digs, and posts I thought were his most consistent. Very effective rocker step, does a good job adjusting tempo. His main issue as a route runner is just playing through contact, both at the break point and at the line of scrimmage. I think he's got some crafty releases, but struggles to reach a threatening speed down the stem if the defender lands that initial punch, and then also gets hung up by contact when he's trying to cut laterally. He's elusive after the catch with really good contact balance, instant deceleration, led this receiver class with 27 force missed tackles this past year, also ranked second in yards after contact per reception at 5.6, and then a solid 4.2% career drop rate and rare body control and balance to secure acrobatic catches. He had that game winner against Penn State that you've probably seen. The Texans take Peter Woods at 28. Probably my biggest faller from the preseason, at least among first-round prospects. If you played out Peter Wood's career in reverse, you would say, wow, this guy has taken noticeable, significant steps forward every single year, which is a convoluted way of saying that he has regressed every year of his career. His pressure rate went from 11.4 to 9 to 4.3% in 2025. Pass rush win rate took a similar trajectory. Run stop rate went 16.3% to 9%, and then slightly up to 10.1%. And on tape, there's a lot to like. He's an easy mover. I think NFL mass, but I would expect the arms to come in slightly below average. Heavy hands to clear the edge as a pass rusher. He can convert speed to power. He can win across the face. A truly elite block shedder. Like, his hand pop and torque at the point of attack is unreal. But I question the conditioning because the play speed is very erratic from game to game and quarter to quarter. His footwork and burst to attack the edge after he clears the blocker's punch is pretty inconsistent. So you'll see him get a lot of quick wins as a pass rusher, and then he just can't capture that angle that he created for himself. His bend and fluidity, I think, are below average, which limit his ability to finish as a pass rusher. Not only does he struggle to flatten at the top of the arc, but if he gets a clear win into the pocket, he has difficulties breaking down in open space. His hand placement and overall pass rushing technique are really inconsistent. He needs to improve his pad level and precision into contact as a power rusher. Misses pretty frequently with his swipe move. And then I want to see him speed up the process between realizing that his first move is tied up and transitioning into a counter. He has effective counters in his bag, but he only uses them as a last resort. He needs to really up the urgency, have that counter loaded up, so the moment a blocker, snatches his jersey, neutralizes his swipe or whatever, he's immediately transitioning to his second move. But yeah, very talented player. I just don't think that the tape really justifies a top 20 pick, and so he's going to fall a little bit in this mock draft. The Rams got kind of sniped with their first pick, missing out on some of the top corners in this class, but in that situation, I don't think they will feel the need to reach down their board for a worse corner because the depth really picks up when you get into the late first round. I went with Colton Hood at 29 to the Rams. He's a physical press corner. Among the top corners in this class, he's probably the most disruptive at the line of scrimmage. At the same time, he has really smooth transitions, easy access to his recovery gear from press man, so he can aggressively jam and then turn and run with deep threats down the sideline. He isn't as sticky at the top of routes, really relies on bullying receivers at the line of scrimmage, reducing their overall route speed and just preventing them from even making sharp enough cuts to create separation. When a receiver is able to release cleanly and then get in and out of their breaks efficiently, he doesn't really have the hips or the feet to mirror them, but he's usually very patient at the line of scrimmage and doesn't let receivers manipulate him out of position like that. At 30, the Rams are going to take Missouri linebacker Josiah Troder, a true junior, early declaration, listed at 6'2", 237. We'll get verified measurables for him in a couple weeks. Troder has dynamite attached to his wrists. He's got a heavy punch, stuns blockers on impact, but also a massive arsenal of other moves to avoid or attack the edge of a block if he doesn't need to just take it on straight up. He's a consistent tackler with a lot of stopping power, makes a surprising number of diving tackles by the jersey where like most linebackers wouldn't even impact the play, and he's still somehow able to single-handedly bring the runner down. And then decisive and instinctive reading and reacting in the run game. He's similar to CJ Allen in the sense that coverage is a complete work in progress. He gets manipulated into vacating his zone by smarter quarterbacks, takes himself out of position against play action and RPOs. I think his range showed up flowing sideline to sideline in the run game, but there were several times where he got stacked by running backs on wheel and rail routes. All right, so I had to make an audible for the Patriots at 31. Initially had them taking Blake Miller, the Clemson right tackle, moving him to left tackle, moving Will Campbell to left guard, and then moving Jared Wilson to center. I still think doing that, or the same thing with like Caleb Lomu, another tackle that you like, I still think that is the best decision for the long term. But Vrabel just announced that they are going to be staying with Campbell at left tackle. I don't think there's a ton of value at positions of need for the Patriots, just based on how the board fell. I'm going to take Miami edge rusher Akeem Messidor. This is somebody who's just outside of my top 50, so I don't personally agree with the pick, but it seems like the NFL is a lot higher on him. 67 pressures, 13 sacks, 21% pass rush win rate in 2025. He's a technically sound pass rusher with really good lateral quickness to cross the blocker's face, attack the B gap. His explosiveness, bend, and pursuit speed are average. He was a lot more productive and efficient rushing from the interior as opposed to rushing off the edge. His pressure rate at 0 to 4 technique was 21.1%. That dropped to 14.4% at 5 to 9 technique. When he's matched up against guards and centers, he does have an athleticism and quickness advantage. That kind of shrinks the further outside he aligns. He has an extensive injury history, and he's going to be 25 years old when he's drafted. I don't really care about the age just like in a vacuum. I don't apply some, grade reduction based on older players, but I do care about age when there's some major limitation to your game that you need to improve. And with Akeem Messidor, he really struggles to win with power. Doesn't have much voltage in his hands. He isn't overly explosive into contact. The lack of length does prevent him at times from establishing first contact. For a 25-year-old player with his natural leverage, I just wanted to see a lot more power, and had the nice long arm sack against Trey Zune in the playoff game against Texas A&M. Couple nice reps scattered throughout the year, but overall his bull rush was disappointing. And then we're going to finish it off with the Seahawks taking Texas A&M guard Chase Bzantis. This is another pick that I think Blake Miller would be in play here, depending on Abraham Lucas's health. But Bzantis is my highest graded available guard. I think he's probably the best hand fighter in this guard class. The timing, the nuance, the different hand techniques he has in his repertoire, that's going to be incredibly valuable in the NFL. He has a deadly snatch trap as long as the refs aren't calling it holding, and he's a pretty good zone blocker, decent power at the point of attack. Just really struggles to connect to blocks at the second level. Like when you see him get out on one of those pulls, you're kind of holding your breath. Trips over traffic a lot, has a hard time cleanly connecting to moving targets, also gets out over his toes in the run game occasionally.